The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Melbourne today on his third official visit to Australia. He will receive a rockstar welcome from the Diaspora here with a sold-out stadium event in Melbourne expected to attract more than 20,000 people. But the visit is also a chance for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Narendra Modi to tackle some critical issues in the relationship, including trade, security and human rights. Lisa Singh is a former Labour senator and now CEO of the Australia-India Institute. I spoke with her earlier. Lisa Singh, thank you so much for coming on The World.
Thank you for having me.
Now, firstly, how significant is it for a sitting Indian Prime Minister to visit Australia, for the third time?
Well, very significant. I mean, the fact that it's the third time makes Prime Minister Modi the only Indian Prime Minister to visit Australia that often. And I think that whilst it's significant for us here in Australia and says a lot about our Australia-India relationship and how important India places Australia, it also is very much part of India's Act East policy. Hence, Prime Minister Modi visiting Indonesia, Australia and New Zealand all in the one visit. And I think that is because not only is that part of their policy, but it's also part of the fact that we are living in a very contested region right now. And that is where both Australia and India take our trusted partnership, which it's become, a lot more seriously. And I think that's what we're going to see over the next couple of days, is our relationship being more defined through a security lens. And it makes complete sense. We've got the United States that is not necessarily playing much of an active role or interest anymore in the Indo-Pacific region in itself. It recently changed the name of its Indo-Pacific Command to Pacific Command. That's, I know, sent a lot of concerns through India. We also have, obviously, the hegemon of China, not always, abiding by the international norms and rules that both Australia and India and, most democracies have signed up to deliver.
So let's talk security, and then, the signs are clear when you talk about China as well. We saw this week with the launch of a ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean just south of Nauru. Does Australia see India as a significant security partner, but more specifically a counterbalance to China? But does India accept that perception as a possible counterbalance?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go so far as saying a counterbalance. I think Australia sees India as an important security partner in itself. And I think in this visit we might see the upgrading of the security agreement, which was signed back in 2009 between both nations, having some more framework around it. And that is because, we are two democracies that do have a lot of shared interests. And those shared interests do span the entire Indo-Pacific region. Australia's wanting to play more of a role in the Indian Ocean. It's written in our National Defence Strategy. India, of course, has been a leader of the Indian Ocean for a very long time. India equally is starting to play a lot more of a role and interest in the Pacific, where Australia, of course, sees itself as being very much part of our neighbourhood, and, our Prime Minister's recent visit to Fiji and Solomon Islands, also meeting, obviously, with PNG today. All of that makes a lot of sense why the two countries want to come closer together.
Lisa, you've written about a piece about how Canberra is not paying enough attention to the Colombo Security Conclave, this alliance of Indian Ocean states, including India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and also Seychelles. How and why should Australia engage with this particular alliance?
Well, look, this alliance is really fascinating because India has played a leading role here in getting the support of those other South Asian nations to be part of a grouping by really formalising the grouping in a conclave, setting up a secretariat. I think they're going to base that out of Colombo. And Australia, should really start to recognise, in terms of its bilateral relationship with India, but also the issues of wanting to, ensure there are free trading routes, and that's where a lot of our trading routes travel through in the Indian Ocean, that it should be playing a role in recognising the significance of this upgrade of this conclave. And one way I've suggested it could do that is at the right time, hopefully being invited to become an observer, taking up that offer.
Lisa, you talked about trade. So we have this ACTA agreement with India signed quite a few years back. But you're looking at two-way trade, 54 billion between Australia and India. That's dwarfed by China, more than $300 billion there. It's quite clear the potential is not realized despite the sheer size of India's population. What should be done there? Is it more on India's side of things to improve that trade relationship? Because it can be quite protectionist in some industries.
Look, I think China remains a large trading partner for both India and Australia. But this is where, particularly post-COVID-19, Australia has really made a concerted effort to start diversifying its supply chains. And India is playing a really important role in that. Yes, it's still at the around $50 billion two-way trade mark, but that is a huge improvement from where it was a few years ago before we had the ECTA, the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. Of course, we are supposed to be seeing, and hopefully there'll be some movement over the next couple of days on this, the relationship move to a full free trade agreement, as India has signed with New Zealand. So, our friends over the ditch have beat us at that this time. But to get there, there are some sticking issues. And you're right to raise the issue of protectionism, I guess, in India, at least. Protectionism in the sense of understanding India's farming sector is being a lot different to Australia's. And whilst Australia does want that open access for agricultural products, it's always going to be a difficult one with India and in the way it's farming. Small subsistence farming particularly is constructed.
Let's look at the colour here. So Melbourne meets Modi, this sold-out event tomorrow at Marvel Stadium. What are we expecting there?
Well, if it's anything like the last two sort of events that he attended, to meet the Indian diaspora in Australia in Sydney, which happened in 2023 and in 2014 at Sydney Olympic Park. This one at Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, I would think will be no different, if not bigger, because Melbourne, or Victoria in itself, actually represents, something like 35% of Indian-born Australians are here in Victoria. So it could be an even larger crowd than last time. It does have a sort of rock star vibe to it, having attended the last couple myself. But really it's an opportunity, I guess, for the Indian diaspora here, particularly those that are Indian-born and have moved to Australia, who now make Australia home, but obviously still have a connection to their place of birth, to have that connection with India through, obviously, its leader, and for him to address them.
So you've had the chance to meet him the last time he came. Not many people get to do that. What's he like up close? And why do you think he attracts that rock star reception, not just here, but wherever he goes?
Look, he is a very humble leader, actually, but he has a great oratory. And, like any leader that has that ability to really sort of harness through speaking very good Hindi, which is certainly not my foray, he is able to really connect. And I've seen that up front, how he does have that connection with certain individuals. He obviously is got a lot to share, though, in terms of being a Prime Minister now since 2014. That's quite an innings in terms of leaders in the world. So, I think he's the longest-serving Prime Minister in India. So, in that sense, he's got a lot to give and share, and he certainly does that quite quite givingly.
Yeah, of course, he's a bit of an enigma in a way, but of course there are always uncomfortable questions, I suppose, because it does come at a time where, Modi's government has presided over a country where, press freedom rankings, democracy rankings have fallen, but also there are human rights issues when it comes to minorities. How does Australia address these issues in the context of both our countries being democracies that, on paper, respect the rule of law and international law as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously India has issues domestically that are playing out, and, just as Australia does as well, have issues domestically in the political sense playing out. I think, though, for Australia, our relationship with India is really defined on shared interests. And, that's what really binds us. And, regardless of sort of some of those domestic issues that are happening in India, I think our relationship strategically, which is how it's defined, is way more important than sort of not having it there. So I don't see Australia and India going backwards. I see us going a lot more forwards. Because there is a lot of trust there. And that trust really comes down to our two leaders. And I think we'll see that on display at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, and on to that huge event in Marvel Stadium tomorrow. Lisa Singh, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.